All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown. All three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, I am going to be reviewing Hollywood Station by Joseph Wambaugh. This book came out in 2006. Let's talk about the cover first, because you know I love graphic design and cover illustration. So, yeah, this is cool. It's got the Hollywood Walk of Fame right there, Hollywood Boulevard, all lit up in lights and darkness and everything, and it's cool. Wraparound is nice. This is book one in Joseph Wambaugh's 5-book series about Hollywood Station. Hollywood Station being the police station in Hollywood. We've got Hollywood Station, Hollywood Crows, Hollywood Moon, Hollywood Hills, and then the last book in the series, for whatever reason, is titled Harbor Nocturne. So anyway, Joseph Wambaugh himself was a retired Los Angeles police officer turned writer. And I'm telling you, every single one of his books, it's like watching the HBO show The Wire. This guy, Joseph Wambaugh, knows policing, he knows gangs, he knows criminals, he knows the underbelly of Los Angeles and Hollywood. He understands everything about the job of law enforcement and how officers communicate with each other, communicate with the criminals, how the criminals communicate with each other and communicate with the officers. And all of the above, it's just absolutely written with an eye towards expertise, because the guy did it himself, and he puts all the realities and realistic stuff of police work in here. This is not over-the-top John Wick type action or crazy, weird Beverly Hills Cop type just ridiculousness. This is real. These are real stories about real policemen. Now, it starts with a robbery in a Hollywood jewelry store that connects to the Russian nightclub and gangsters. And so you got the Russian mob, you've got gangsters of every stripe, you've got this Hollywood Station police force full of all sorts of different characters we're going to talk about. It's literally the best cop/gang story, since The Wire, really. I mean, it really goes hand in hand with that. Talking about how police officers, because if you followed my channel for any length of time, you know I have worked in law enforcement for a certain faction of law enforcement for about 16 years now, and so I kind of understand the world. A little bit, the world of gangsters and the world of cops. Now, this book opens up with just a 4-page scene of nothing but dialogue of these two police officers talking back and forth, jumping from the mundane parts of conversations to the absurd parts of conversations to just cracking jokes about each other to like talking about actual like work involved stuff. And it's 4 pages of dialogue that just bounces back and forth. And these characters are known as Flotsam and Jetsam. We never get to know their real names. They are just, throughout the entire series, they are named Flotsam and Jetsam. And a lot of times, a lot of these cops in this book, we just get to know them by their nicknames. We don't know who their real names, but we get to know who they are through their nicknames almost more than if we actually knew their real names. So it's just this 4 pages of dialogue of these cops just bantering back and forth, and it's absolutely spot on the way police talk to each other. And then they get a call, and so they have to they are both of these young cops, Flotsam and Jetsam are newly stationed in Hollywood. So they're brand new cops to Hollywood Station. They've worked in other departments. They're brand new to Hollywood Station. One of them kind of speaks like a surfer dude. The other one, they end up going on a call and they find a body. There's a woman in the bathtub, dead. Her boyfriend has slashed his own wrists. The boyfriend fights them. It's just one of those bizarro, you have to be there to believe it, kind of if you ever wrote this in a book nobody would believe it type scenes, but it's typical. These type of bizarro, outlandish, grotesque slash almost hilarious things that cops see every day, Joseph Wambaugh does such a great job of putting those situations into his books, and seeing how criminals do such ridiculous things at the most ridiculous times, and how the police have to react to this. And so we've got this dead body in a bathtub in this, and her boyfriend with the wrist cut, and then this fight that ensues, and it just goes from the bizarre to like a mundane call to the bizarre to the more bizarre to the more bizarre. And that's just the way law enforcement is. And I love that Joseph Wambaugh captures that right in the opening scene. And then we get all these other cops that end up coming to this scene, like the Oracle. Again, we just know him by his nickname, but he is the sergeant in charge of these. He's a 46-year-old guy. No, he's actually not a 46-year-old guy. He's been on the job for 46 years, and he's still working. I mean, he should be retired a long time ago, but he's still working just so his ex-wife never can collect his pension. I know people like this. I know people like this. So anyway, we stumble outside, and we end up in the middle of Hollywood, and we meet characters like Farley, the tweaker, Olive Oil, the other tweaker, Tombstone Teddy, the panhandler, all of these crazy characters that inhabit Hollywood. And then we get to meet a lot of other police besides Flotsam and Jetsam. We get Gamboa. He's the veteran. He's just sick of training cadets, but yet they give him this new partner who's young, a young, pretty, single girl. Her name is Pudgy Polk, and she, of course, whenever you get a female officer and then you've got male officers, everything that is said is inappropriate. And the Andy McRae. Okay, so Andy McRae is one of the more interesting characters. Through Andy, we see how the Rodney King fallout changed policing in LA. And this is kind of the theme of this book, is how these cops in 2006 are dealing with 10 years worth of new policies, where in the olden days, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the Los Angeles Police Department was like the shining force of, you remember the old show Chips, California Highway Patrol, how it was just glamorized, and everybody wanted to be a California cop, and they just had such a great, and then along came the Rodney King incident, which turned everything on its head. And you can clearly see that Joseph Wambaugh through this book is trying to show you how things got a lot worse in Los Angeles, not only for the citizens, but for the police themselves. Once they started changing a lot of policies about how to do police work in Los Angeles because of the Rodney King incident. And we really get to see that through the actions of the criminals, through how the cops react to them, through the reactions of the cops, how they sort of navigate all of these different policy changes and how they've had to do that for 10 years, how some of the old veterans long for the old days of policing, and how some of the new cops are still long. They've never, even though they didn't know the old days, they still long for the old days. So, and then at the end of every scene, at the end of every episode, and all of this, there's this guy, the shift commander named Compassionate Charlie, who comes along, and he looks at the scene, looks at all the fallout of the scene, and all the carnage, and all the mistakes the cops have made, and all the stupid things the robbers have made. And he could always sum up, even though he didn't see, even though he's just the shift commander showing up at the end, he always somehow seems to sum up the entire episode with just the most spot on, pithy, sarcastic, and witty observation of all. And it's absolutely, because you just wait whenever these cops, whether it's Hollywood Nate, who's the handsome cop who wants to be an actor, or Flotsam and Jetsam, or Gamboa, or Pudgy Polk, or any of them, Sergeant Oracle, any of these guys, no matter what situation they get them into, on comes the shift commander when it's all being cleaned up, looks around, and just nails the observation. Like he can see everything. He knows everything that's happened, even though he wasn't there, and he just comes up with the most clever summation of the whole situation. It's funny, and you have to read it to. So if you want to read a book, and trust me, if you want to read a series of books or an author that does police the realistic way that police is done, nothing over the top, nothing outlandish. I mean, the police makes mistakes. They're not the greatest marksmen in the world. They're not the toughest guys in the world. It's not like Lethal Weapon or any of these cop shows where the police are just over the top. It's really kind of like Hill Street Blues, but even more realistic than Hill Street Blues or NYPD Blue or any of those things, if you remember those shows. Anyway, Hollywood Station, I was in the mood to read some cop books, and I just went back to the old trusted Joseph Wambaugh because he is so good at it. So good. This book's a 10 out of 10, and if you want to read about cops and how they really, really, really function, especially in Hollywood, this is a great book.